We're very honored to be here again. It is one of our most favorite places in the world. And I recall coming here several years ago and forming a good friendship with Dave and Cheryl, and really just enjoying them and just enjoying being in this beautiful city of yours. I think you rated number 1 or number 2 in terms of lifestyle, and certainly you've got it all over here. So there's a lot to swallow this weekend. It reminds me of this little girl in the biology class, and the teacher was saying, whales are big mammals, but they got very small throats. They can't really swallow people. And this little girl said, that's not true. Jonah got swallowed by a whale. She said, that's impossible. It couldn't have happened. She says, I really believe it can happen. And the teacher and the child were arguing. Eventually, the child says, well, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah. And she says, what happens if he's in hell? And she says, well, you can ask him. So just to relax you, get you started over there. I see there's TED Talks in town, and Caroline did a TEDx talk last year. So the concierge asked me, are you talking to TED? I said, yeah, we're doing 7 TED presentations to Coastal. So you're really in for a sciencey weekend. Yeah, yes. So I'm not going to spend too long, except we have some books to give away, and since we're talking about relationships, who's been married more than 50 years in this church? That couple over there. Anybody else? Okay, can I get Usher to give them the book? Thanks. And this over here. And this couple over here. Thank you. Who's been married less than a week? Less than 2 weeks? Less than a month? Who's planning on getting married next month? Okay, that couple over there, so let's take another book. Now here's the biggie one. Who's had more than 3 arguments this week? All right.
You might not have enough books.
And you are married, is that right? This one is called Who Switched Off My Husband's Brain? And there's another couple who are, there you are. It's actually good to congregate in safety and talk about these things because the subject has been very much mishandled. It's very much almost derogatory, the way that male-female relationships have been portrayed in the secular world and so on. And it's a shame that in the Christian world as well that we're not far behind. I mean, we make jokes like men are from Mars, women from Visa, that kind of thing. And you know, they're just, you see, we laugh, but I mean, you know, ting, here we go again. So hopefully tonight we hope to present to you. Tomorrow we'll carry on in the same vein. For the last, since we last left you, we've been teaching in a lot of churches in terms of quantum physics and relationships, quantum physics, God, quantum physics in the brain. So that'll be on to tomorrow. And then on the weekend, we're going to be talking about the sower and the seed, the importance of long-term memory, building memory of the word, how to build it, how to learn. And we'll bring in lots on from our new series on mental health, mind health, which is very topical at the moment. So I'm just giving you an outline. I'm not great into products. We have many different products. But what we are doing is we're moving into onlines. Let me explain to you what onlines. People buy a book, they get excited about the book, and then 3 days later they give up. So that Romans, the things that I want to do, I don't want to do. And the things that I do want to do, I just don't do. So online programs is really what we've taken is everything from Caroline's clinical practice and put it into programs. So you have Caroline every day telling you what to do. It's like going for therapy. So you sign up for one of these things, and every day she's telling you what to do and what's happening in your brain for the day, and you think, how does that work? It's the miracle of modern technology. Around the world, people getting Caroline in their face every day, 2 devices. You can download it to mobile and whatever, and 7 to 10 minutes. And you develop a disciplined lifestyle of renewing your mind. It's very important that, because we constantly get ahead and we fall back. And thank God for God's grace. His mercies are renewed every morning. We can confess our sins and move forward. It's a process and so on. So this is merely to help you. I'm not saying it's the definitive in terms of Christianity or Christian help or so on. It's just that that seems to be the way things are going. So we have new onlines, new programs, and so on. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Caroline and to Dave and Cheryl. We thought about the interview style to make it more realistic, chance for questions and things like that. But tomorrow, Caroline will be preaching, teaching, and ministering as normal. I encourage you all to come to the services this weekend and to really partake of what God has for you. So bless you. And they say in Texas, where we're from, Ya'al. So bless you all. All you Vancouverites. Why do they call the airport YKV?
YVR, yeah.
YVR. YVR.
Yeah, YVR.
Why?
It's just the, it's a different
terminology.
signals for different
Okay.
airports. I'm not sure how they
Thank
come
you.
up with those, but
All right. Thank you.
it's a good question. But there's some other questions we have. Cheryl's got a question for Dr.
You
Lee.
know what? I do. I'm so glad you're here because I think you're going to help everyone that is listening. Because, like you said, men are from Mars, women are from Visa. I think that is so true for the most part. But, Carolyn, can you explain the difference? Is there really a difference between a male brain and a female brain? And I'm really hoping the answer is yes, because we need
Yes.
some help.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It is.
Phew,
So there's-
okay.
So there, in a moment we can stop. Yes, there is a definite difference, and God knew what He was doing. But what's interesting is that 98% of the genome is exactly the same for male and female, and only 2% is difference. But that 2% makes all the difference. So we are hugely different, and the way that the easiest way to actually see the benefits to that is, I call it the 3 C's, that we designed to complete each other. We designed to complement each other. So we designed to be completing and not competing. See, we designed to complete each other but not compete with each other. First C. We designed to be complementary to each other. Here we go. Mac's going to bring it up. And we designed to be exponentially better together. So you'll get the 3 C's now. And basically everything about the male-female brain works in a complementary fashion. So we all do the same stuff, male and female, but we're doing it totally differently, and that's what's so interesting about it. We do it because the different parts of the brain are different sizes. Then because of that, they function slightly differently. So there's a reason behind. I think that's what you wanted to hear. There's a reason behind, but the differences between males and females, it's not a superiority and an inferiority, which is what the world has done. The world has said that a male, there's the whole male-ism, female-ism, there's the whole gender-ism that has been an issue, as we know, for so many years. Difference is not a value judgment. Difference is not a bad thing. What difference does is it tells us that we're unique. So the difference is very, very good because God first and foremost created all of us unique anyway. So just for a moment, step outside of the box of male-female and look at humankind. And if we see from the beginning, He made us in His image. He made us uniquely in His image. All the scriptures, uniquely, fearfully, wonderfully made. So first and foremost, we are unique. So there's not one single, whether you and I girls, we're not the same. You know what I'm saying? So it's every single one of us is first and foremost unique. Then, in addition, there's maleness and femaleness. So it's so complex. You would actually think, how on earth do we even get on with each other? How do we even, because there's just nothing. But the whole thing is the differences bring us closer because of the differences, we have to target the struggle. We have to get over ourselves and really tune into someone else. And that's the Jesus model. So your differences are not a hindrance. Your differences are an advantage because as you tune out of yourself and you tune into others, you actually then basically enhance each other's differences and they become positive. So by focusing on the differences and trying to understand, you increase your own intelligence and you increase your own gifting. And that's what brain research is showing. So the more I try and think, hey, do it my way or the highway, the more I stop that selfishness and the more I get over, wow, you're different. That's amazing. There's something you can do that I can't do. And that is going to enhance who I am. It takes away envy, jealousy, bitterness, all that angst, self-esteem issues, everything, because there is no other Cheryl, there is no other Dave, there is no other Caroline Mac, there's no one else like you. So each of us is formally and first and foremost unique, and then we express that uniqueness through maleness and femaleness. Now God has a massive sense of humor. He created sense of humor. So I really think to help us get over ourselves, He made these differences because they're actually pretty funny. When you handle them properly, when you stop, the reason they become difficult is because we get very selfish, and we're in a culture that promotes a me, myself, and I trinity. So it's all about me, myself, and I. Me, myself. It's all about you and you feeling happy. And if you don't feel happy, it's someone else's fault, and everyone else must make you happy. That's not the Jesus model. The Jesus model is stop looking out for yourself and look out for someone else. And as you give 100%, you'll get back automatically. All the research shows that your brain improves intellectually, functionally, in every aspect. And when your brain is doing well, your body's doing well. Okay, when we get over ourselves and try to understand. So that's a long answer but I wanted to lay that foundation there. Difference is good. So these are 3 C's. We complete, we do not compete. The world teaches us to compete with each other, with our husbands, with our wives, with the other males and females. We are compatible, which means we fit together. We are complementary, which means we basically contribute to and improve each other. So we are exponentially better together. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be married to have this benefit, because whether you like it or not, you're in a world of males and females. You have brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, friends, work colleagues. So this is not just about a marriage relationship. It's also about the fact that we are designed to get on with each other. So difference is not a value judgment. And we live in a world where it's socially kind of the thing to look at difference as being a value judgment. And difference is not. Difference is a beautiful thing and something to celebrate. So if we shift our perspective like that, we can actually have a better foundation for dealing with life and dealing with the issues of life. So that's a little introduction.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're coming into Valentine's weekend, and that's a good announcement in case anybody missed that, and you have to do some shopping quickly. What did you get out of the session? I got a reminder, it's Valentine's weekend. When we think about Valentine's weekends and the way a male brain works, a female brain works, and I've often heard it said, guys are stimulated by what they see, and women are more motivated by what they hear, and so forth. So, what's going on in the brain that guys are more stimulated by what they see versus what goes on in the female brain? Can you speak to the difference? Because that's often what we hear, but I don't understand what's going on inside.
Okay, so God had a lot of fun when He designed us. So before I answer that question, I have to just lay the foundation.
Yeah.
So this is incredibly important. This is really scientific. Okay, element name, woman, symbol, WO. Atomic weight, don't even go there. Physical properties, generally round in form, boils at nothing, may freeze at any time, melts when treated properly, very bitter if not used well. Chemical properties, very active, highly unstable, possesses a strong affinity to gold, silver, platinum, precious stones, and Visa. Violent when left alone, able to absorb great amounts of exotic foods, turns slightly green when placed next to a better specimen. Usage, highly ornamental and extremely good catalyst for the dispersion of wealth. Probably the most powerful income-reducing agent known. Caution, highly explosive in inexperienced hands. I felt the need to say that one because whoever's about to get married, you just need to know this about your future wife. Okay, so now the guys. Okay, so element, symbol, element man, symbol XY, atomic weight 180 plus minus 50 pounds. 50 physical properties, solid at room temperature, gets bent out of shape easily, fairly dense and sometimes flaky, difficult to find a pure sample. Due to age and rust, older samples are unable to conduct the electricity as well as younger samples. Get some bioidentical hormones. Okay, that was just a little aside. Chemical properties, attempts to bond with WO, which is woman, at any chance it can get. Also tends to form strong bonds with itself. Becomes explosive when mixed with KD, which is child, for prolonged periods of time. Can be neutralized by saturating with good food. Usage, none known, possibly a good source of methane gas. Caution, in the absence of WO, which is woman, this element rapidly decomposes and begins to smell. There you go. Okay, so based on that question is really good, because what we do then is we start with the outside, like eyes and ears, hearing, and we can go inside the brain and just go deeper in and with questions dig around, and then tomorrow I'll take things a little more slowly. So it's okay if we jump around, but that's a fantastic place to start. So just in terms of color, Cheryl, have you ever found that you've held up a couple of shades of something similar, like you've bought maybe 3 different color gray coats or jackets, but you can see the shades are different. One's light, one's dark, one's medium. There's a definite difference. You hold them up and you show them to Dave and you say, which one should I get? Which one's the nicest? He says, I don't know, they all look the same. Okay, so What that is the women have an XX chromosome. Do you find that? Does that happen?
We don't want to go there.
We don't go there.
We actually have an ongoing dispute against gray and brown.
Oh, do you? Okay, but for him it's grey and brown. For you, it's not. There's shades.
For me, it's just gray, but I understand that I don't see gray. It must be brown.
So you had this debate. So there's a difference.
Yeah, there is
What
a
we see,
difference.
there's a definite difference. I remember we were painting one of our houses back in South Africa many years ago, the house we built just before about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and we were choosing paint, and I could see all these swatches of paint, and they were all different, but they were all versions of like a cream color. And I'm saying to Mac, which one? He said, I don't know, anyone, they all look the same. Now, this was I spent 3 hours deciding on which color. Anyway, so that's a typical thing that can cause an argument, and it really doesn't have to cause an argument. We are XX, males are XY, okay? So we have 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. The 23rd pair is the XXXY, it's the sex chromosome. Okay, so women have 2 X's. The X part determines how many cones we have in our eye. Cones are the cells that see color. So women have 2 times more cones in their eye, in the way that the eye is designed by God. So we see more shades. So men see all the colors, but we see the nuances. And this is what God has. If you look at the pattern with all our senses, as well as all the structures in the brain, and then as well as just how we present as males and females, you will see always that it's more of a detail focus in the woman, and there's more of a big picture focus in the man. Having said that, it's very important that you don't think that detail is a woman and male is a big picture is a man. It's not like that. It's a woman will focus from detail to big picture, and a man tends to focus from big picture to detail. Okay? And it's complementary opposites. It's those 3 C's again, because neither on its own is seeing the whole picture. And that's what we see with brain science. That's what we see when you analyze the physical body and the senses and and right through to intellectualizing emotions, stress, all the things that we're going to talk about this weekend. We see this difference that is always complementary. It's almost like God said, okay, to get them to work together, I will give half to the males and I'll give half to the females in different versions. So we've all got everything, but I'll give this version of emotions to males. I'll give this version of emotions to females. I'll give this version of sight to males. I'll give this version, but it's half the picture each time. So they have to come together in order for the truth to actually happen, and that's so scriptural. It's so foundational to, us working together, being in relationship. It's almost like He's designed us in such a way that we are forced to have relationship, but not forced in a horrible way. The desire is there. But so a male on their own or a female on their own can never make a proper decision. Okay, so if you're not married, you need to consult with the opposite sex that you trust, because you will never have the full picture. And that starts with color, as simple as color, something as simple as color, which is more on a joke level, to the serious stuff in your life. That's why I'm always anti a company being run by just a male or a female CEO or something, and why I love a church like this, Dave and Cheryl, where that's an obvious equal partnership, where they're both contributing, and that's why your church runs like it does. So that's very important. So also with our eyes is men have got more M cells, which is a type of cell in the retina, and that means that they look at motion more. So M cell recognizes motion, and they have more acuity, or they sense motion and see motion more. So men follow and see things that are moving really attract men. You'll see a baby, a newborn baby, a little boy, their eyes are following that motion. He's watching your every move, girls. Okay? He's very stimulated by movement. He's very drawn to movement. Okay, so whereas women have got more, that's the M cell. Women have got more of the P cell. We also have M cells, obviously, but men have more. This is how it's always throughout all the structures of the brain and the design of the body. We see this kind of thing happening. The P cell is more detail focused. Women have more P cells, men have less P cells. So women are more detail focused. So right from what we're seeing at the outset are senses, which then come into our mind and into our brain, and get our mind in action. We see these differences. So in terms of structure. So that was just obviously a plan that God had, because it's complementary, because when you put it together, as I said, the 3 C's will start operating. In terms of hearing, It's interesting because a woman, once again, hears more nuances, hears pure tones, more pure tones at a low threshold, which means that she's more sensitive to sound, more frequencies in sound. So we'll hear that little pitter-patter of feet like 2 floors up in the house, and you know someone's moving, one of the kids is up, or you'll hear that sound. Hey, did you hear that? Women have a tremendous sensitivity to sound. Men, that's where, I don't know if you've ever found this, we have this, we get in the car and Mac turns the music up so loud and I'm turning it down, and he's turning it up and I'm turning it down. Eventually I win and I turn it off. But, and then get out and he turns it back on. But it's that loudness men experience through loud sound. So they like the surround sound, they love the technology, they love that noise, not all the time. I mean, everything is in balance. Obviously, I'm not saying you have it all the time, but in general, a man will put the music louder in general than a woman, because the sound is actually creating a sensation through the body, because sound is a sound wave, and sound waves pass through substance in the atmosphere. They actually, it's a physical wave that moves through physical substance through the air, and it moves into the body, and women also experience this, but men experience it more. So it's a way of experiencing, it adds to a man's ability to process all the things going on in the environment. It helps him with emotions and all kinds of stuff. So it's so interesting. So women hear more detail, men hear more big picture, once again. So that's why it's different. So I see, these kind of facts, the way I've written this book is I've got a whole lot of brainy facts. I've got it all divided into, they're short chapters. There's 25, I think, chapters. And I've taken things like hearing, vision, emotions, whatever, all these things that come up. And I've taken like brainy tips that are key things that will help you. And the reason I'm saying is this, because people around the world are doing Bible studies on this in relationship counseling, etc., etc. Because if you don't read, at least read the brainy tips, because they are the essence of the core things that you need to actually understand about the opposite sex that will just help you in your relational skills. Obviously, I recommend you read the whole book, but I've really, because I believe so strongly in us having good community, good relationship. The community is so vitally important. God, it's not about, doesn't matter what I believe, God's made us for relationship. We better make our relationships work, otherwise we insult God. So I'm a very big believer in the development of healthy relationships. Okay, so does that answer your question in a long way as well?
No,
Long-winded.
That's good. It's a good answer to that. Yeah. Just processing it.
I can say more.
No.
How do you respond to that? I think you make such a great point, and I appreciate what you said. If someone is not married, if they are not married, to have the balance of having both a male input as well as a female input, so that there's a balance, so that you see from every side. And I guess that leads me to another question, and that is in the area how the brain functions, correlating with that question, but going a little step further, and that is in intimacy and sexuality. The difference between how we see things, you said, even the sound waves and how we see that. How about in our sexuality? What's the difference, how a woman and a man would even view sex, being intimate? Would it be similar?
Yes, definitely. So first of all, let's talk about our skin. Our skin is the biggest sense organ in the body, and it has all these receptors for touch, and we designed for touch. And we see this throughout the word, God laying on hands and that kind of, so touch is very important. So our skin is designed in such a way that we have these receptors, and as we touch each other, as we pat or give someone a hug, that causes a release of chemicals in the brain, neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, that will actually, like for example, endorphins are released, oxytocin is released, various neurotransmitters are released, and it's all of this incredibly beautiful design activates our endocrine system. So suddenly our whole body changes based on touch, and I'm talking about loving touch. I have a book downstairs where I talk about these different types of touch, etc. But basically the normal, obviously, is loving touch. And the other side of the coin is cutaneous deprivation, where if you don't get touch, we're designed for touch. So people like babies that are just, babies that are abandoned and they just put in an orphanage and they don't get, a lot of babies in cots, and they're not getting that cuddling that they need from a young stage. You get cutaneous deprivation. You can have it in a marriage where there isn't enough physical contact. That physical contact is a way, because we spirit, soul, body, but we live in a physical body, and the physical body has laws, the soul has laws, and the spirit has laws, but they're integrated. So we express our spirit and our soul through the manifestation of our body. So the brain and the body become become the physical substance through which we express who we are and how we function. And as we are led by our Spirit and led by the Holy Spirit, that natural, correct love will come out. There's a lot of studies done on people that have been ill and in hospital, and when their loved ones are there and touching and praying, how their pain levels go down and their need for medication goes down and their healing increases. I mean, there's just thousands of studies proving the power of touch and of love. So in terms of that as a foundation, women have 10 times more sense receptors in their skin than men. Okay, so yes, so we're very sensitive to touch. So so men almost need more touch than what we do because we're so sensitive to touch. But it doesn't mean we don't need touch. Women need that touch. But it's like men need more. We need to make much more. If it's a girl, you actually need to initiate that. And also a man will be looking for that. We would get more satisfaction from a little pat. For a man, they need more than a little pat. That hug, that touch, that connection with your husband, with your spouse. Now, having said that, I just have to insert over here that if you're not married and you are hugging someone for longer than 20 seconds, you have activated, now 20 seconds is quite long when you count a hug, okay? It activates hormones in the body because of the things I've just been describing. So depending on the kind of hug and the level of intimacy, the way that you actually approach the person, there's the hug and then there's the hug. Okay, so when it's the hug and it's more than 20 seconds, you are activating the sexual response. Okay, so this is very good to tell teenagers. I teach a lot on this stuff to teenagers because the hormones and things, as you know, are going crazy, and the brain doesn't really sort of stabilize until about 20, between 18 and 20. So this is why it's so important that we lay foundations of good thinking inside our children, so that as they get into situations that they have a core network of well-developed spiritual side that will influence the mind, that will influence the body. So when the hormones go crazy, they can pull back. Now, we're in a culture that says don't pull back, just satisfy every desire that you have. So, giving tips like this, that to be careful about long hugs, etc., unless you're married. So that's just something to bear in mind. So we told our kids they can get married when they're 40. I'm just joking. Okay, so but it's really, kids have grown up on a diet of this, and we've overheard our children telling their friends that, their friends have made decisions to sleep together before marriage or whatever. Even, this happens amongst Christians, that we're not excluded from the situation. And my kids have given my book out and said, listen, if you do that, all kinds of things happen. Because the sexual act, not only is it a physical body act, but it is driven by a mind, soul, and a spirit. And then it's designed as a spiritual intimacy by God. So every sexual encounter is a full-blown, integrated spirit, soul, body experience. Okay? And God is in the process. It's a very creative, very, very satisfying and incredibly bonding act, because as you have sex with your spouse, you literally are building that person in your head. So you literally got each other's DNA inside of you, and the more you have intimacy, the stronger that becomes, that person in your head. And it's supposed to be, because you look at each other differently, you respond to each other differently. It's a way of keeping you in a very loving state when it's that healthy love. So it's very good to have sex. It's very healthy to have sex. You should have lots of sex if you're married. It's not it's a normal good thing. It's a godly thing. It's from God. And I'm not going to discuss with you what's normal, because it's unique for every couple. And there may be people here that think, good grief, how detailed is she going to get? I can get as detailed as you'd like me to get, but let me discuss it with the pastors first. But just let's keep it more on a general level. So to bear that in mind, that we have that partner. Now, if you have extramarital sex with multiple partners, you are building multiple people in your head. So now we wonder, is there any wonder that people that have multiple partners are confused about being able to build a stable relationship? Because if you've got them, you've got their DNA, you've got their issues inside of you. So this is why a marriage relationship is so unique, because just a movement. I mean, Matt can just move in a certain way. I'm sure you know this about Dave. Cheryl could just move, and I'll get a certain look on my face. And even though a male can't see it as quickly as a woman, we tend to see the looks a little bit quicker than that, as I mentioned earlier on, because of our eyes functioning differently. We know, because of the level of intimacy, that something's right or something's wrong. And the whole idea is that God's God is to help us to tune into each other. So I shouldn't be trying to get my needs satisfied. The sexual encounter is very satisfying. It's very good. It's very wonderful. Increases intelligence, increases health, increases longevity. It just does a host of incredible things for your body. See how kind God is? He gives you something as great as sex, and it's just so good for you in marriage, okay? But not only that, it teaches you to get over yourself. If you are having a sexual encounter where you're focusing on your husband and not thinking of porn or something like that, or your wife and not thinking of porn, where it is you two involved in the relationship, you are building such a desire for each other and such a level of gentleness in your relationship. And that's what they see from research as well. Good sexual encounter brings tremendous gentleness and compassion amongst the partners. Okay, so and it gets better as you get older because you are more mature and you learn how to handle things more efficiently. Does that answer your question? I can go in. Do you want to take it deeper?
Can you?
Some of them are saying, more, give me more.
You can almost hear the wheels turning of everyone, and it does answer it. And I think there's, what you touched on is so great. And I think, just a component of what you said, and if you could just maybe just touch on that a little bit more outside of marriage. And I think that's really a key, because maybe prior to Christ, there was sexual encounters with multiple people. And now that, what do you do with that? Now you want to live a holy life. You want to live a life that really honors God, and that with sexual purity, what takes place?
Okay, yes, go for it.
I have to say up front that I grew up very wild, and I was a rebel.
Wow,
And
thank you.
in my generation, you started smoking at 13, drinking at 14, and sleeping around at 15. And God was so gracious. I married a virgin. And when she explained this to me scientifically, typically now and then I would be driving in that car, and I'd think about this girlfriend, or I'd think about I slept with this one. I was able to confess it and get such a lot of peace, because I knew that I didn't want to keep it in my head. I really wanted to pray for that person, and God had washed me clean from all of that. So I say to all of you here, those that have slept around before marriage, that there's always hope. Don't let it build up in your head that, it was a thing that you did, because as Paul said, as such, you were once, and now you're washed clean, and you're children of God. So I want to encourage you to do that, because you really don't want those people in your head. And so the thing is, but God is so gracious, gives you a lot of grace that you can deal with it. You could say, you just handle it differently. It just feels differently. So I just wanted to contribute towards that. I just felt the need there that, this is supposed to be a place where we can discuss things freely and so on. So I don't want to present ourselves as any better or anything like that. I just wish Caroline had written this book a lot earlier in our marriage. She was still working on this. So, so a lot of the things there have really helped us. And so you've got to believe it, that, your spirit, soul, and body, and that God has cleansed you. You're a new person in Christ.
So good. Thank you. That's so good. And it's such a good thing that we're talking about this, because you're teaching on renewing of the mind at the moment, and our brain is neuroplastic. Neuro means brain, plastic means to change. God has designed us able to change our brain. Your brain is not it. Your brain is part of the big picture. So we live in a world, and I'm going to get to this question from 3 angles. First of all, we live in a world that's very neurocentric, which is you hear brain and you think brain is God. It means literally, if someone says you're into brain neuroscience or you're a neurosurgeon, it's considered like the most, people almost worship the concept, and everything is seen from the angle of the brain. If it's in the brain, well, that's it. The brain simply represents what's in the mind. Where it's at is in the mind. The physical nature of the brain and the body that God's given us is phenomenally complex, and this is why science is so exciting, and why the TED Talks are so exciting, and why all these things are so exciting, is because God is revealing his mysteries of his incredible creation through how he's designed us so graciously. But the brain is not where it starts from. Our mind is not self-emergent from the brain, which means that the brain doesn't produce the mind. The brain simply is the material substance through which the mind expresses itself. So if you think of a Watchman Nee's, I know Dave also loves Watchman Nee, it's one of our favorite books. He talks about seeing the spirit, soul, and body as a light bulb. So you've got the light the electricity is the spiritual part of us. It's the source. Okay, and that is where things start, and then you've got the expression of the light, which is the soul. So the manifestation of that light in your spirit is what you see. Okay, so electricity is the source, and then the light produced from the light bulb is your soul, and then the wire is the substance through which is basically the physical, the body, the substance through which the electricity and the light will used in order for manifestation to take place. So if one of those is missing, we don't have we don't have a bulb that's operating. So as humans, we have to remember we're spirit, soul, body. So if we've had multiple sexual encounters, as Mac described his past, that means that with the mind, a decision was made, and with the physical body and the mind involved, the sexual act took place, which means that a learning event happened. Every time you experience something, you are learning, because you are experiencing sensations, and as you do, as it comes in your brain, no matter what it is, whether it's sex or whether sitting listening to me now, you're still learning. You're a learning being, and you're thinking and learning. So you would have built that experience inside your head, and then the person's DNA with all the bodily fluids that are exchanged basically add to that memory and that thought. So you really have a physical structure inside your brain, but it is not there forever. It is not your destiny. So you can have 20 different sexual partners in your brain through confession, repentance, but first of all, acknowledgement. We have to take responsibility. In any change, it starts with taking responsibility. And this is what science is showing, is that with all the drug approach to dealing with issues, etc., what they're finding is that it's the first thing that, when it comes to emotional stuff, I'm not talking about the physical. I'm talking about when it comes to emotional stuff. When we deal with that, the first thing is we have to take responsibility. We have to realize, hey, that was my life before. If Mac didn't take responsibility, if he didn't acknowledge and recognize, hey, this is not the way to live, this is not what it says in the Word, this is not what Christ, I could tell him that 100 times. He had to come to that realization and take the responsibility. Once you take the responsibility, we, in a loving relationship, this was sorted out before we got married, but he told me about it. Obviously, I knew when I met him that this was the life that he had. But so before we got married, Mac had confessed and dealt with these things. So he had to take responsibility. And I remember having a conversation with Mac when I first met him, and he couldn't understand how we weren't going to sleep together. And then once he understood what I believed, and he then got born again, he recognized and understood. So I stood firm against the situation, and basically we talked. So in other words, he realized, learned, took responsibility, and then I came alongside him. So what I'm trying to say is that once you take responsibility, you do need loving support to help and encourage you on your journey. And having said the acknowledgement, taking responsibility and acknowledging, with the loving support, we have the most loving support from Jesus Christ. Yeah. He did everything for us. So in the confession, we receive forgiveness. Now, all of this that I described is spirit, soul, body stuff. So as you're doing this responsibility, acknowledge, confess, repent, deal, get the support from a loving environment. As you're doing this work, you are busy destroying that toxic issue. So that person in your head is busy disappearing. So that toxic issue. So you'll remember that you slept with whatever, or you may even forget the names and the faces, but you actually, through repentance, that mind action changes your biology, what you believe in, what you have chosen to follow spiritually, the way God has designed your brain. Where your mind goes, your brain follows. Your biology changes according to the dictates of the mind. So what your mind is telling your brain to do, your brain simply will do. So your source of your source and your manifestation will change. Basically, that's what drives the physical change in the wire of the bulb. In other words, your brain just does the bidding of the spirit and the soul. And I'm stressing that point because you are not hopeless. You are not a victim. You are a victor over and above your biology. You can redesign your biology. So it goes. So through work, it goes. And that's where there is a cycle. That's where science is so amazing. There's the cycle of once you confess, it takes 21 days to break down those thoughts. That's what science has shown us. It takes another 2 cycles of 21 days. So 63 days, more or less. This is what is to break that bad habit, that issue out of your head. And sometimes it takes a couple more cycles. And if there's a few people, it doesn't matter how long it takes. And as I said to you at lunch yesterday, that one of the things that I'm teaching a lot now is that when you have a sinful situation in your life, and listen, all of us have them. We know that. Okay, this is just a reality. We all have bad decisions and sin in our life. Do not feel shame for the sin. Feel shame for not doing something about the sin. Now, hear what I'm saying. Shame will keep you bound in the sin. Shame will make you want to suppress the sin. But when we recognize and celebrate the recognition of the sin, hey, that's wrong. I celebrate that. I recognize that that's something I don't need in my life. I can celebrate because I know there's a way out. I can confess, I can repent, I can heal, I can get that out of my head. The only reason that I wouldn't do that is if I didn't think I could get set free. Then I would feel guilt and condemnation, and that will cause chemical chaos inside of your brain and structural chaos inside of your brain, which will manifest as an abnormal light in your life. It will manifest with all kinds of mental ill health issues. Okay? So mental ill health is not a disease. Mental ill health is a mind thing that has gone wrong. So there's no them with mental ill health and us. There is all of us reacting to life. So all of us are mentally healthy, but we make wrong decisions. And if we don't get out of them, we will then manifest with symptoms. And it doesn't matter how bad the symptoms, we don't want to label because the labeling will lock you in. It puts you in a box and says, lock you up, throw the key away. That's your lot in life. You are now an X person. You're a them. And there is no thems. There's only us. Okay? And so we must be careful that we don't take the sufferings of life and medicalize them. And then we suppress them and we dehumanize the humanness of mankind. God has made us very human and very beautifully human. And suffering is part of humanity. And we have to get out of our postmodernist type thinking where everything's just got to be so cool. We were talking about this. Everything's got to just feel good and feel wonderful. And if it doesn't, mental ill health, I'm depressed, I need medication. That's not life. Life is Jesus suffered in the garden. Jesus cried. He didn't sin, but he took the sin of the world. You know the story. I don't have to tell you what you know. King David, look what he did. He repented and acknowledged. In other words, suffering is a normal part of existence. But we don't have to stay in the suffering. We don't have to stay in the shame. We need to celebrate the recognition of the sin and recognition of the suffering and celebrate and step into God's arms as he helps you. And that's mind work. And that what I've just said is stuff that happens in your mind and your brain changes accordingly. So you are building a good brain mindset that will help you deal with the issues. But if you choose to think, I'm so bad, I can't go to this church, or I better hide this life of mine, and I just suppress it, I can't deal with this, I'm going to squash this emotion down, it's still there because it's built. Whatever you know and remember and think about is there physically inside of your brain. So it will explode volcanic fashion in some way at some stage in your life. So we need to deal with stuff. We need to really get back to the cross. We need to really acknowledge and recognize those things so it can go out of your head. Long answer again.
Oh, I like your long answers. They're great. You know, one of the things that you had said earlier, Mac, you're quoting Romans chapter 7, where Paul talks about, the very thing that I want to do, I'm not doing. The thing I don't want to do, I'm doing. And then he goes into verse 1 of chapter 8. There's no condemnation to those who are in Christ. And sometimes we feel condemned. We think, man, I did this wrong. I can't even come to the Lord. But he wants us to come. And of course, he talks about later on how we can renew our mind. And he doesn't want us to feel condemned. He wants us to be healed and wants us to be renewed. One of the things that I think often men feel condemned about, and also women as well, but more so it's on men, maybe you can explain why, is the whole issue of pornography. And they keep that, they're ashamed of it, and there's that vicious cycle of it. And it'd be great to hear from you, Dr. Leaf. Okay, what's going on? Why are men more locked in? Why is it so addictive? And I think when they realize I'm not condemned, and how do I get out of this? How do I be free from it? And to celebrate recognition of that was a very good point. Just to celebrate, hey, I've celebrated the fact I've stage 1 recovery. I've got an issue, and that's number 1. Now here's my way out. But that's playing in the church and outside the church, and it's become more of an issue in our world today. So what's the difference between male and female there? And what goes on in the brain? Why is it so addictive? Why is it such an issue? And really, what, from your perspective, a scientific perspective, what's the path to freedom?
Can you find? I've got a slide on addiction, so I'm going to tell you some facts, and then you've got the slide up here to help you. Okay, first of all, let's start with the concept of addiction, which has been very misrepresented in the world. Addiction is actually, and you're going to be very shocked when you hear what I'm about to say, normal. Okay, not to pornography, to God. We're designed to be addicted to God. He's made us in such a way that we crave Him. We crave the satisfaction of the relationship with God, which nothing else will satisfy. So there we go. We're designed to be addicted to God, and His design is of the interconnected, extremely complex love circuit in the brain. So everything that God planned for us, everything that God designed for us is obviously going to be designed in our structure because we integrated spirit, soul, and body. So whatever there is for us as humans in terms of behavior, mind stuff, there is going to be a way that it's going to be represented in the body. So first of all, if we're not addicted to God, we can learn to be addicted to other things. So in addiction to pornography, and I'm talking in general first, then we'll talk about the male-female differences. In addiction to pornography, it is a learned behavior. Okay? You don't become addicted overnight. Okay, so addiction, and this may sound crazy, but God has designed us with such a powerful mind, He has so much respect for you and I, that He gave us extensive intellect. Okay, we're very intelligent. So because we're intelligent, and we choose Him, that's true love. Because you can choose other stuff too. But because you're made in His image, your image is one of craving Him. So if you choose something else, and I'm not saying you in here, I'm just using you in a general sense. If you choose God, you are satisfying that craving within you. Now, when we sell out to God completely, it's completely spirit, soul, and body. So in the renewing of the mind process, we deal with issues that we have dealt with that are in the, the whole thing. So maybe before you knew Christ, or maybe you've been a Christian your whole life, but you haven't been completely sold out, etc. So there's a complete immersion that needs to happen in God for us to first recognize this is an issue, so we can celebrate, recognize it. And that's already, the minute that you recognize the sin, you are already basically broken through that ceiling. You've in quantum physics, particles have to move like on a roller coaster, and then they get to a point where they actually then can pass through the wall. And when you acknowledge, before that you're on a roller coaster, and then suddenly you hit that wall, and if you push through, you get through acknowledgement and celebration of the sin, it means you've got through the wall. But now there's a little journey on the other side. So anything that we're dealing with, anything, whether it is building a good marriage, whether it is becoming an expert in your field, whether it is sitting here and listening tonight and then taking these things away, it is a learning experience. Pornography is also a learning experience. It's something that is coming in through your senses, and it's something that you choose to focus on or you choose to ignore. Now, you can look at pornography is around us everywhere. In every media form, it's incredibly easily accessible. Pretty much most movies are quite pornographic. So the visual stimulation is there around us all the time. A few years ago, I mean, if you think back just 20 years ago, we didn't see things in films then that they see now. So it's getting freer. We're in a very, very free society, and society goes through cycles. If you look at history, it goes through cycles where it was very free, and then it becomes very Victorian, and then very free. So it's quite normal to have these cycles. The point is that we're getting stimulation, and whatever we focus on is going to build into networks in your brain. Now, if you continue to focus on it, you are going to turn it into a thing inside your brain, like a sexual encounter with someone. If learning to pass your exams at school, it requires repeated effort. This in quantum physics is called the quantum Zeno effect, QZE. If you don't remember the name, it doesn't matter. But quantum physics explains what's going on. It's a fantastic way of understanding what's going on in terms of building habits, in terms of getting caught up in addictions that are toxic versus healthy, etc. And all the quantum Zeno effect is that where you direct your attention, your brain is going to follow. So what you choose to focus on, you're going to learn. And if you choose to continue to focus, you will continue to stabilize your learning. So if you spend 21 days thinking about that porn picture, going on the site, a porn site, thinking of that image in your head, whatever it is that's watching those movies, focusing on things. We were just recently took our kids to Italy for Christmas for 2 weeks, and we did these various tours, and we landed up in Naples. Was it Naples?
Yes, it was in Naples.
Naples.
Art museum.
And an art museum. You're laughing.
No, we were there with our 4 kids.
And there's a whole
All
gallery that's just
pornographic
porn.
art from throughout all the centuries. So
But
It was interesting following our kids as they walked through this.
they're kind of looking at us and we're looking at them and we're thinking, okay, you go first, we'll go after you. But anyway, but what was more fascinating was the fact that we were watching the people. People were taking photographs. They were going up and taking photographs of these images. And it was the most, everywhere else was empty. Everyone was jam-packed into that particular gallery. And so the fascination with the physical body and sex is there, okay? And it's there for a reason in a marriage situation, okay? When it becomes distorted, it goes wrong. But the point here is that there's a sensation. Now, you can choose to see that as art and move on. Or you can choose to see that as something that will stimulate you, take photos, or stand there and have the wrong thoughts. And then you can choose to go home into your environment and think about those images. You can choose to watch that movie and think of that sex scene. You can choose to watch the movie and not think of that sex scene. And if you think of that sex scene today, tomorrow, the next day, within 21 days, you have basically hijacked your learning pathway, because we talk about reward circuits in addiction and they talk about all this fancy language. Essentially, the science of thought is what I studied. As you listen, you learn, and as you learn, you build networks in your brain. It's a whole genetic expression. You grow, you get extra genes that will basically form to be able to accommodate this new stuff that you're learning. So you, like if you get measles and next time you expose once, the next time you expose to measles, you won't get measles because, or if you have a vaccination that prevents it. In other words, your body actually learns, your immune system actually builds up a learning response so that the next time you're in the situation, your body knows how to fight that measles virus. So taking the biological back to the mind, as a sort of an analogy, our body, when we choose to learn, by the same token, we also change our brain. So that the next time we're in that situation, we feed the craving, or we don't feed the craving. It can be applied to sugar, it applies to processed foods. I'm bringing out a book in a month called Think and Eat Yourself Smart, where I deal with the mind and the body. So I don't teach you to eat blueberries to get your brain healthy. I teach you to eat real food. I teach you to be an integrated spirit, soul, body. I teach you how to look after your temple. All of this is related. We can't just do one thing. You can't just deal with the spirit and ignore the soul and ignore whatever. You've got to be integrated. Sure. So pornography is another sensation that you can choose to get addicted to or choose not to get addicted to. So by the same way you've learnt to wire it in, you wire it out. So it starts with responsibility. It starts with acknowledgement, which is the responsibility, confession, repentance, not shaming yourself, looking at it as a celebration. Yes, that's wrong. Yes, feel that moment of shame. You should, because it is wrong, but not get stuck. It's not a quagmire. You're not stepping into a quagmire of shame. The devil would love you to, and you'll never get out of it. You'll be in sinking sand and all kinds of stuff. You need to get out of that. You need to see how you once were, as the scriptures say, and you need to acknowledge and get out of that, and then celebrate as you walk through, and then that the whole process of changing. Maybe what I can do tomorrow is just talk a little bit about the stages of the detox steps in terms of some of these examples, or even tonight if it comes up. Want to say something?
Yes. We probably get about 300 emails a day around the world. There's a proportion of them that are people dealing with pornography. And I must say, it's not only individuals, it's unfortunately senior members in the church and so on. And typically we try to answer every email, but I want to tell you this, the secular world deals with it slightly differently. They have certain things like, if it's on your computer, then don't go to your computer. Or, if you know you've got the temptation, then just drive past the adult theater and so on. And I want to tell you, as a Christian, I think people struggle with that. And why they struggle with that? Because they're trying to do it on their own. Think about it this way. I mean, the most amazing scriptures in Romans 8:13, it says, if you put to death the deeds of the flesh through the power of the Holy Spirit, you will live forever. So if anybody's here, there's no guilt or condemnation. This is an open meeting discussing these things. What I normally say in those emails is that if you walk with the Spirit, you won't satisfy the lust of the flesh. It's all Spirit related. That's going to help you. That's going to really help you to deal with that issue, because yes, you can do all those things. You can lead a Spartan lifestyle and so on, but it's really you're trying to do it on your own, and it's important that you do make that choice to do that. I'm not saying just say, okay, Holy Spirit, I'm going to sit in front of this computer and, don't put it on, sort of thing, But you make that choice. That's probably a bit silly what I said, but I mean, I really encourage you to get into the scriptures. The scriptures are there to help you. The word is alive and dynamic and living. It can really help you. And yes, do the other things. Make the choice. Drive past that adult theater. Avoid getting into the situation of watching your computer. When you see a woman in a street, and this is one I had to work on for a long time, because, it says if you just look at a woman with lust in your eyes, then you're heading down that path of adultery and sin and so on. And look at her eyes, look at her face, see the incredible creation of what God's looking. Men tend to focus more on the other assets of a woman. I won't mention them, but they look different then, and you're going to bring that up. But really, I'm getting myself in trouble over here. But the Holy Spirit is there to help you. He's your helper, He's your friend, He's everything for you. And He's the one who can say, don't do it. Stop. And you listen to Him.
And that's so important because it's a spirit, soul, body thing. And there's definite changes that happen in your brain because if you're wired for love and you're made in God's image, and you have built in this toxic pornographic pattern habit, it's basically a bad habit that you're building in, that you've wired and you've learned it, and it's through choice. Then you change your brain. Your brain can't handle it. Your brain, you can just, the next, if you turn to the next slide, it basically changes. You get something called dendritic remodeling. Dendrites you get neurons in your brain, they're about 100 billion. And on top of the neurons, there are these little branches that look like trees. And basically, those are like supercomputers, but way, way, way more advanced than supercomputers because there's trillions of these little dendrites in your brain. And every time you learn, you're growing dendrites. They basically hold your long-term memory. They are extremely complex in function, and it's very new understanding of how these work because for years they just thought they were like little sensory, like little antennae, but they are actually where memory is stored. And they build and change based on the signal of your mind. So your mind designs them. Designs literally what these things look like in your head, and how many you have and how much you have. So the more porn you focus on, the more dendrites about porn you grow in your brain. And because they are abnormal, it's toxic, they look different. They have a different electrical magnetic kind of structure. Chemically, it's because it's not normal. We're wired for love. It's an abnormal thing. That's why you feel that guilt and the incorrect sensation and the high, the craving of the high and the immediate satisfaction, and then after that letdown, the guilt, etc. All of those. Whereas if you're in peace, if you're in the right things, you don't get that roller coaster of emotions. So besides the fact that you now, as you built this toxic thing, and these dendrites start almost like a virus, they start spreading through your brain, the toxic thoughts, and they start eating dendrites. The bad ones eat the good ones kind of thing. So you get this dendritic remodeling and you start getting memory lapses. Your memory, in other words, your memory will be affected in a negative way. Your mind becomes foggy. You get lack of clarity in your thinking. There's various different structures in the brain all the structures in your brain are involved in this thought pathway, but I've just selected a few to talk about. The brain is very connected. It works with circuits. There's a lot of research being done on what they call the connectome, and I've got a great slide which I'll show you tomorrow on just inside a real brain of what the connectome looks like. And basically, these connections, these circuits through your brain, everything's connected. So if you're having one thought, whatever's absorbing your mind is going to impact other thoughts. And so there's an order to your connectome. There's an order to everything God has created. So when we have toxic issues like porn or whatever in our brain, we upset the connectome. And that will always manifest in mental ill health type things. Our mind won't be healthy. So memory, emotionally labile, losing one's temper, aggression, lots of behavior patterns will start manifesting because there's actually brain damage in your brain. So now we cause brain damage. Thank goodness when we celebrate, recognize, confess, it's everything we've been talking about, you can rebuild the healthy. So whatever damage we've caused, when we eliminate the toxic source, we actually rebuild healthy. And that's the beauty of the neuroplasticity of the human brain, which is incredibly powerful. Things like when you're into porn, cortisol levels, without cortisol you would die. I mean, cortisol's it's a good thing inside of us, but it's supposed to be it's supposed to flow in a very balanced way, so when it doesn't, all kinds of things can go wrong in your body. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, and the blood-brain barrier is like this little set of cells that control what moves inside the brain. And there's a reason God designed that, because certain things shouldn't get inside your brain. Okay, there's certain things that you don't want because they're psychoactive or they're changing something, etc. So when cortisol is not supposed to enter your brain in large quantities, preferably very minute quantities, if any at all, but there is some that's needed. But when you're in a high stress toxic state, your body goes into negative stress. Stress is very healthy, and we'll talk about that as well. But toxic stress from toxic thinking is not healthy, and it causes cortisol to cross the blood-brain barrier, and it affects something called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is very important in, basically, it's like the structure that holds short-term memory and helps to convert short to long-term memory. And it's these little genetic there's a gene, there's a whole genetic code operating in the hippocampus. Okay, that's that structure over there. You see there's like a blue thing in the middle, and then you see like an orange thing. It's like like a bulb, and then there's like a thing going around. You see like a garden hose. So it's like a sort of round thing. I don't know if you can see, Cheryl. Do you want me to point to it? There we go. Okay, so that's your hippocampus. So the front part, the back part's the striatum. So the front part's the hippocampus, the back part's the striatum. And the hippocampus is very, very, as I said, very involved in memory formation. The striatum is very involved in motivation and what they call the reward circuit. It's just part of the, when you are motivated to carry on learning, then you will see firing in the striatum and the hippocampus. When you are unmotivated, then you won't see as much firing in those areas. Now, they don't make learning happen. They just respond to. Your brain is a responder. It doesn't produce, it responds. Very big difference. The world will tell you it produces the TED Talks that are happening now, because I was reading some of them. We'll talk about how your brain does this, your brain does that, you are your brain, you're a machine, you have no control, etc., etc. That's not true, okay? So you control, because there's another body of research it's very split. The one that says the brain is self-emergent, and the other that says the brain responds to mind, okay? So basically in those two structures in the hippocampus and the striatum, we're going to see changes in function. They shrink. They literally shrink and start changing. So we get cognitive decline. Okay, so when we stay in these states with toxic habits, and porn we're talking about porn, so that's our example, you literally are setting yourself up for things like the dementias. Okay, Alzheimer's and all these weird things that happen in our brain when we're going wrong, because years and years of wrong thinking, years and years of incorrect cortisol levels, years and years of incorrect insulin levels, years and years of incorrect eating, because very often that craving is linked to, the craving for porn will be linked to the craving for the wrong kind of food, and because there's this need to satisfy. So things tend to get out of balance in many different ways. So we build these incorrect circuits, and we're actually causing damage in the brain. We upset the way the proteins fold, whatever. So what I'm trying to say is that you can choose whatever you want to choose, because God's given you the freedom to choose. But there are consequences of your choices. I lay before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose life, so that you and your descendants may live. Male, female, we didn't cover that yet.
We're just getting started. Yeah, we should cover that. Talk a bit about that, but also while you're talking about that, maybe we could relate to it, how the difference between the male and female, the way we handle anger. Some people compare firecracker to kettle type, but so maybe it's in the same category. I don't know, but that would be good to talk about that, because that often comes up even when we're counseling and dealing with couples and in families too, is this anger issue and what it does. So maybe if you can touch on that.
Well, what I'll do is quickly, just because we can, the same circuits that are affected are very similar in toxic thought and in anger. So Mac will bring the picture. Okay, thank you. We'll bring the picture up as well. But basically, just very quickly coming to porn, just to finish off with porn, male and female, then we'll move into the anger and link in the male-female. With both males and females, this is not just a male thing, okay? The statistics are very similar for male and female getting stuck in porn, and it starts young. You're getting kids as young as 13 and 14, male and female, that are addicted to porn. It's the more exposure, the more the opportunity, because they're so vulnerable as a young brain. So it's almost easier for them to fall into those patterns, because it's kind of culturally, this is what you do, etc., etc. So we've really got to watch out for our younger generation, because if it starts that young and it's not dealt with, because they think they don't know what to do, so they are doing the wrong thing because that's what their friends are doing, It's very common across the world, globally at the moment, for 12 and 13-year-olds at 7th grade. It's pretty bad. It's a very, very, very bad age for porn. Okay, so, or should I say vulnerable age for porn. And you look at your sweet little 13-year-old and you can't believe that they're addicted to porn, but you would be amazed at how many kids are battling with porn. So if it starts that young, it's going to continue. So we've got to really be open in our homes. I want to encourage you. We've got 4 children. There is nothing that we don't talk about in our home. The kids have come up with things that, you have to keep a deadpan face because you think, how on earth do they know about that at that age? They come home and ask you, what's a blowjob? And they're 12. Okay, so you need to tell them, because if you don't, someone else will. And it's going to be the wrong answer. So you need to have a safe environment where your kids don't feel judged. And if they've done the wrong thing, let them feel safe. Let them say, Mom, I've messed up. What do I do? Because if you don't, they're going to get into that cycle. So male and female, if we come back to the vision side, the hearing side, males are very stimulated by the movement, the picture, the image, the technology, the video. So you'll find a male would be more into the actual watching of the movies, and the woman will prefer, would be more stimulated maybe by the magazines and that kind of thing. Okay, woman with the talk. Okay, with the detail of the talk, they can visualize in their head. Men prefer to see more. So in other words, men will fall into addiction patterns easier with more visual movement stimulation. Women with more detail. So reading these like Barbara Cartland books and things like that can set up porn addictions. These old rubbish lovey-dovey things that are full of sex. The whole thing is just one big sexual encounter, all romanticized. That can easily get a woman into porn, the words, the detail, the emotions, and the whole environment of, he seems, the romanticism of it. And it seems innocent, but it can catch you very easily. So women very often fall into porn in that way, which is interesting. So anger is a very normal emotion when it's managed correctly. As you know, Jesus got angry when in the temple and pushed the tables over when people were abusing that situation. So, and when we see injustice, we get justifiably angry, but that's anger that's healthy because it's going against something that's wrong. Where anger can get out of kilter, but in a male and a female, is when we're in a toxic state. So we have to first examine where we're at when we are angry. Okay, so so let me explain this. When you're angry and mad and shouting or having a fit about something, it's not very easy to stop and be self-aware. Because we couldn't care. We would just rather carry on blasting whatever. But when the moment's over and you feel bad, be self-aware. Because mindful self-awareness, and I'm not talking about the thing that's very in at the moment, which is mindfulness, which is a Buddhist technique which is being carried over into the world, is very, very popular. It has proven to be very effective in helping people control anger and addictions that are toxic. And what's good about it is it's teaching people to actually stand still for a moment in time and take stock of what you're thinking about. What I don't like about the traditional mindfulness is it's more of a just calm your mind down, squash all the ugly stuff away, and let's just go into another zone. That's not what God calls us to do. God calls us not to be passive, but to be active. So we need to be mindfully self-aware. We need to change a toxic habit. We need to be aware what we've done is wrong. And we all know it because the Bible's very clear. Romans talks about the fact that all of us know what's right and wrong, even if you don't believe in God. It's in us. It's there. It's ingrained in every single cell of our body. It's part of our DNA. We recognize. Now, you can numb that in various ways with constantly staying in a pornographic state or a toxic state or medications and that kind of stuff. You can numb those things and you can train yourself to ignore the bad stuff if you choose to, but there will be a consequence. At some point you will explode. But anger is an interesting thing because anger follows a circuit in the brain. Let's go to the image quickly. A circuit in the brain, there's a lot of structures that are involved, but I'm going to just give you the basics. Okay, so if you have a look, you'll see that there's the heart down here. Okay, and then those are the 5 senses, and then that's the spinal cord. And then if you just go to the blue part in the middle, that's part of your midbrain. Okay, then you'll see there's the front part of the brain over here, above the eyes. So above the eyes, that's the front part of the brain over there. And then if you go across, you'll see like an orange bulb. Do you want to go and point over there? I'm going to ask Mac to stand up there and point. Okay, thank you. Yes, okay. So that, so that is, okay, I'm going to come up and do it for you, sorry. Over here, this is the amygdala, and going to the hippocampus, okay? So this over here,
I should
this
have known
structure
that.
over here, you knew that.
No, I should have known that.
Yeah, you should have known that. What's wrong with you? What are you reading? What you been doing in your spare time besides running a church? Okay. So if you look at that structure there to there, and then down to our heart. Okay, so we're going to look at that triangle from there, the amygdala, across to the frontal part of the brain, and down to your heart. Okay, we're going to look at that combination. That's a triangle. Okay, so if you look also, there's a green part there in the middle that's called the corpus callosum that joins the two sides of the brain, and then above that, can you see there's kind of a pinkish color? That's called the central gyrus. Okay, so the green part and the pink part, we're looking at that, and we're looking at that little bulb. We're looking at the front of the brain, and we're looking at the heart. Now imagine that there's a triangle from the amygdala to the front of the brain, down to the heart, and up again. Can you visualize that triangle? Okay, add a loop to the top of the triangle that goes up through the pink part, the central gyrus, okay, above the green part. So can you visualize that in your mind? All right, so when we get angry, we are responding to a situation. So something comes in through our mind as a sensation. As it comes in through, we receive it through our 5 senses. It goes into your brain, and your mind is now in action. So the minute sensory information enters into your physical structure of your brain is activated, and your mind goes into action. So now you are thinking. You are thinking, you are feeling, and you are choosing, because that's the role of the mind, which is its intellect, will, and emotion. It's your soul. Your mind is your soul. So the minute the senses move into the brain, mind is in action. So you're thinking, you're feeling, and you're choosing. So a situation happens, and maybe it is you in a discussion with your spouse, and things are getting out of hand. So this is now information coming in, and what happens is you start getting firing on this through the brain. The normal thought processing pathway is happening, but in addition, we get a light shining, like an amplification of that triangle. So there's extra activity in that triangle. Does that make sense? Okay, still with me? All right, so now in the male, it's a perfect triangle. And in the female, we have that extra loop at the top. So our triangle's not straight across. Our triangle's got an extra loop to the top. Okay, remember that women tend to be more detail-focused to the big picture, and women and men are the opposite. So we see this in this situation. That extra loop enables the woman to incorporate more detail, more nuance, more emotions, more history, future, whatever, all the stuff. Okay. And so women generally, because of that extra loop, as the sensations are coming in, take a little longer to get angry, because it's a bigger loop. So this triangle's got this extra bubble on it. Whereas with a man, they get angry much quicker, because it's a very sharp triangle. So a man will get angry quicker, but he will cool down quicker. A woman will take longer to get angry, but will take longer to cool down. Okay? So toxic anger upsets cortisol levels. Cortisol, when it's at high levels, passes the blood-brain barrier, like I mentioned earlier on. Besides the fact that you have 1,400 different chemical responses going wrong in your body with incorrect anger. Okay? Incorrect anger is, and if you continue to do that repeatedly, that there's certain triggers, and I'm sure you have got them. I don't know if you guys have got them. We have them, and we still have to work on them. There's certain triggers that will activate an angry response between the two of us. So through self-awareness, not mindfulness in the weird yogi way. Okay, mindfulness in that, hey, I've just upset Mac. I've just pushed his button. You know exactly what buttons to push, don't you? To make Dave mad. So do I. And he knows what but not Dave. I don't know Dave. I know Mac. Vice versa. That's said that wrong. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about, girls. So in terms of that, and guys, you know what's going to. So you develop a self-awareness to not press those buttons. That in itself is toxic. That in itself is going to it's going to cause dendritic remodeling, shrinkage of the hippocampus, brain damage. Anything in the toxic zone is going to cause brain damage. Repeated habits, so that you may not have a porn issue, but if you have an anger issue, you are also damaging your brain. Okay, because it's going along the same pathways. But you've got an extra things that your heart's now going to be involved in the process, and your heart's like a little checking station. It's got like a little electrical there's 40,000 neurons more or less that run the electrical side of the heart, but it also is involved in your thinking. And that it's very much sort of like a checking station. So our heart plays a role in our decision making, but if we get mad, we ignore that. So it's interesting that the anger pathway needs to be controlled. Whenever we need more control, we always have our heart involved in the decision. So physically, our heart gets involved in our decision making. So all day long, your heart is actually involved in your thinking and choosing. But you see that pathway highlighting more and more. The amygdala is bigger in the male. And the amygdala's main role is one of being an emotional perceptual library. So like a library contains books of information, your amygdala contains information about memories. Okay, so it's the perception, it's the emotional perception. So it's whatever situation happened, that memory stored in the outside of the brain, in the cortex, but the emotional part is stored it's also got emotions, but the emotional perception. So that almost like the thing that kickstarts it is how it made you feel. The kind of big picture of that memory is stored in the amygdala, and it's connected to the detail of the memory in the outside of the brain. Does that make sense? So when the amygdala is activated in a male and a female, it's there to warn us. In a male, it's bigger. God has designed a male to be very aware of the big picture, what's going on, aware of danger, very much emotionally, perceptually aware of upcoming situations. Men are very good at going into an action state when they see the big picture. We're very good at seeing the details. So the small amygdala is not a negative. It just is the way it's connected to the other parts of the brain means that it's actually going to help us be more detail focused. So the designs are bringing this picture up all the time. So if a man gets, if you're getting into that argument, a man will get cross quicker, cool down quicker, opposite with women, and that causes high levels of cortisol, which is bad for you. So you need to calm the woman down, you need to calm the man down, whatever. And I don't know if you've ever found this in your marriage or anyone out there, but it's happened in our marriage where we've had an argument. I'm still mad, and then Mac wants to have some fun, and you know what I mean by fun. And I would rather just, throw something at him at that point. Anyway, if you are loving and kind and gentle guys, and you just say, he must say to me, he is wrong. I'm just joking, but if you just be gentle, gentleness is the key. Gentle, loving, I'm sorry. You're going to say something here. He's going to...
No.
What's he going to say?
I must say that, again, I get back to the scriptures. That scripture from James 1:18, be quick to listen
Yeah.
and slow to speak. That's helped me so much because you're right, we do have triggers. Let's be honest. We've been married 27 years, Caroline and I.
28 in April.
28 in April, yeah.
Detail.
Detail, yes.
And there are triggers that have happened in our life, and I've had to say, oh, this is coming up again, and withdraw, because really 12 hours is a long time to wait. So,
At 12 hours, what he's referring to is if you are in toxic stress, your cortisol levels can stay high for up to 12 hours. And that is really not a good thing at all. In a man, for some reason, I have to ask God why this is like this, but within an hour, a man's cortisol levels drop. But a man is very reactive and very much more reactive than a woman. They react quicker. And if it's used the way God designed it, that's just a role that they play. They're very quick to protect, to look after, etc. Quick to get solutions going and that kind of thing. And then we may come in with the detail to make it work better. But that reactive thing is an issue. So when the cortisol level inhibits your thinking. So it drops down quickly in a man, and it should drop down quickly in a woman, and it doesn't. But if you're gentle and kind, if you operate in the fruits of the Spirit, even if the woman, I'm telling you, we will say we are sorry. If you are gentle with a woman, the woman will say she's sorry. But if you get mad, it's going to just make it even worse. Okay. Questions from the audience.
Sorry.
It's time to me to stop.
I was just thinking, in the Guinness Book of Records, the world's fastest talking male is a Canadian called Jerry Wilmot, and he was an announcer there. And the world's fastest talking female is Fran in New Jersey at 12 words a second. So I'm clocking you there. You're about 5-6 words a second there,
I've got a few
sweetheart.
to go then.
I know. Just teasing you.
I've got a few to go. I've got to tell you this one more thing before we take questions
Absolutely.
from whatever you're doing
Yeah.
next. Is that, do you think women talk more than men? Put up your hands if you think women talk more than men. Okay, would you say it's the majority of the audience?
It seems
and
like
half.
every woman,
Half and half.
or every man just put up his hand. I'm not
Half
sure
and
every
half,
woman.
okay.
About half.
Okay, so that's actually not true. We talk the same amount of words, more or less. It's around about 16,000 a day. That myth that women talk 25,000 and men talk 15 is really a myth. This is averages. So it's about 16,000, but we do it differently. Men will do most of it during the day in the work environment. So it's condensed. It's a bit like ice cubes. So women talk like steam. Okay, if you go back to a scientific example, it kind of just wafts and it's long all day. It lasts longer. But ice is condensed, very focused, all now and nothing later. And that's the difference. So it feels like we talk more because we're steaming all the time.
You're steaming. Oh, that helps you a lot.
We're contributing to, global warming.
Global warming, yeah.